do a mindfulness exercise. So bear with me for a minute since we're talking about stress. I'd like you to just humor me and close your eyes for a moment. And try to get comfy in whatever chair you're sitting in, or couch, or wherever you're sitting. And I just want you to start drawing your attention to your breathing, just kind of watching it, just noticing the inhales, noticing the exhales, noticing if it's fast or slow, not trying to change it, not judging it, just observing. It's like watching the waves going in and out. And notice if as you're watching, if anything about your breathing starts to change on its own. Does it seem to start to slow down? Now I'd like you to draw your attention to your heart. Anything you may be feeling there. Is your heart beating fast or slow? What's it doing? What's happening with your body? Now take your attention up behind your eyes. What thoughts do you see floating through your mind? And just watch them like clouds floating by. Don't try to stop them. Just watching them float by. And take your attention back to your breathing again. And just notice if it's slowed down at all. And you can open your eyes and just kind of notice if you feel any different, any more calm and alert. It's just an easy mindfulness exercise you can do anytime, just to kind of take stock of how is your body reacting to stress, and what kind of thoughts are going through your mind. Are they negative thoughts or positive thoughts? What kind of things are you saying to yourself? With that, we will jump in and talk about stress and hormones. Here we go. So I had lots of fun putting these slides together. My husband had a few questions for me, but we're going to talk about hormones. We mostly think about them in a negative way. We might think about adolescence and zits, or PMS, or menopause with hot flashes, but these are actually just examples of times in our lives when these important chemical messengers can get a little out of balance sometimes. But they're responsible for so much more, including regulating our metabolism and our immune system. Now, I was hooking up my computer tonight and worrying about the internet, and that's exactly what hormones are like. They're like the wireless internet, whereas your nervous system is more like your computer, your hardware. And if you were to plug it into a wired modem, so it's a lot more stable. But the wireless, just like the hormones, are a lot more sensitive. And so this is how our body communicates from one area of our body to another, by sending these hormones through the bloodstream. So they're very delicate and they're very finely tuned. You see, this guy here says, I'm sensitive. So to give you an idea, one drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool is the same ratio as the amount of thyroid hormone that your thyroid gland secretes compared to your volume of blood that it travels through. And yet it performs hundreds of functions in the body. On top of this, our hormones are evolved to communicate with each other to keep us in balance. So when one is off, it throws the whole system off. So we'll come back to these guys, I promise. But let's talk about our bodies and stress and how we respond. Our bodies are evolved to quickly respond to danger. You see the tiger there. bodies are ready to get away from danger and keep us safe. But in the modern age, our nervous system and endocrine system still responds to stresses in the same way. We respond to so-called normal life stress using the same mechanisms, even though there isn't really a tiger chasing us down the road when we're running late for a meeting at work and we've been up all night with the baby or the emotional teenager, but our bodies don't really know the difference. The problem lies in that, unlike the tiger, the stress doesn't go away, so we can get stuck in this fight or flight mode. And this has huge consequences for our health. And sometimes even when we're not feeling stressed, our bodies still can get stuck. And women in particular carry so much stress, and it's actually proven in research that we internalize current events more than men. So we even take on more stress on ourselves. So I'm going to introduce you to the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary axis. This part of our brain is called the lizard brain because it's very primitive. It's very deep in our brain. It's ready to respond to any kind of threat. And what happens, whether there's an injury to our body or impending a fire, an actual fire, or a tiger, or any stressful situation, our body releases inflammatory chemicals that trigger our brain. Stress, stress, there's a fire. Okay, and then my notes are blocking my view. Those pituitary and hypothalamus hormones communicate to other organs in the body, like the adrenal glands that are on top of the kidneys. And this is cortisol is one of the main hormones we're going to be talking about tonight. But our hypothalamus and pituitary also talk to our gonads to make sex hormones and our digestive systems, and it's all connected. So back to our friends here. So like he says, I'm not evolved. So I like to think of science in terms of metaphors that just help me get a real good understanding of what's going on. And so to me, cortisol is like a stupid, sexy fireman, and it's actually made from a steroid hormone. So that's fitting. It's produced in the adrenal glands, and its job is to keep inflammation from getting out of control. So you see, they're ready to take care of the fire. They don't want the fires of inflammation to get out of control in our body, and that's a good thing. But they can't tell the difference between if there's really more tigers coming or if it's just moderate, it's just everyday stress. So they're just ready to do the job, but they don't really know when to call it off, or let's say how to be subtle. Now here's some curves of what cortisol is supposed to look like, the one in your upper left corner. Cortisol actually helps keep us alive, not just helping us respond to stress, but it actually wakes us up in the morning, or it's supposed to. It spikes in the morning and makes us wake up, and then it tapers down to nighttime when we're supposed to fall asleep. But sometimes with all these stresses, what happens is our cycles get all out of whack, and we find cortisol peaking at the wrong times, and that can interfere with sleep and make it hard to get up in the morning and have all kinds of other symptoms that we'll talk about. So the stress, cortisol, and mental health connection. So yeah, this fireman, he's a bad boyfriend. He'll mess with your head. Cortisol interferes with daily cycles of other hormones, disrupting sleep and impairing brain function. So that brain fog you may feel is real. So what happens? Oh, yes. So your gut also is connected as part of this picture. It's been called a second brain. I did not know, but found out that a large percentage of your serotonin is actually produced in your gut. But what happens when you're stressed is your the areas of your digestive tract, your upper and lower, become inflamed, or they can, and these can cause all kinds of symptoms from reflux to irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease. Those firemen say, oh, there's a fire, so we have to put out cortisol. And this can actually contribute to depression. So there's actually a name for the syndrome. You might have heard of adrenal exhaustion or adrenal fatigue, but what happens when our adrenal gland is constantly pumping out cortisol is first we have this survival overdrive syndrome, and listed here are some of the things you may feel. And I can email you all some quizzes that you can look at yourself later to see if any of this fits with you, but it's going to be more like you're in overdrive. You may feel tired, but you might be more anxious and irritable. You might be depressed, but you're more feeling overwhelmed, tired, and wired. So it's just go, 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 and you're anxious, but yet you have difficulty focusing. And can also have these be related to these other health conditions. Low sex drive, and one of the reasons for that is because when your body is putting all this energy into making cortisol, it's not able to make as many of the sex hormones, and also the blood is diverted away from those organs in favor of, so you can fight or flight or fly, and you can have stubborn weight, or for some people, difficulty gaining weight. It can also injure your thyroid hormone, which we'll talk about. Now, the next phase, and these can overlap, and sometimes you can even swing back and forth, is the survival overdrive syndrome, E for exhaustion. As you can see, there's a lot of overlap, but it's more the fatigue and the depression, the constant need for caffeine. You might be more susceptible to colds or not bounce back as quickly. You might have low blood pressure, sugar and carb cravings, and you might be more likely to have more energy toward the evening and have difficulty waking up. But not everyone's the same, but these are some things you might feel. And these are annoying symptoms, but they're really important to pay attention to because they're actually signs of something serious going on, that you don't want to ignore them. Because elevated cortisol has been connected to serious health conditions, including some of these terrible things listed here: diabetes, cancer, GI disease, infection, autoimmune disease. And it also does a lot of wear and tear on the body, and it accelerates aging, so we don't want that. Okay. So we talked about thyroid hormone over adrenal production. Thyroid and adrenal are related. So cortisol can also mess with your thyroid gland, and that we really don't want that, because your thyroid gland is like your thermostat of your body. It tells your metabolism to speed up or slow down. And when cortisol talks to the thyroid, it tells it, well, we might have a lot of tigers to deal with, so we need to conserve energy. We need to store energy as fat. So this is really not good. And the thyroid, like we said, has all kinds of other functions too. Stress also reduces the ability to clear estrogen, and this estrogen, part of what it does is inhibit, sorry, stumbling over my words here. Basically, you may have your thyroid level tested and it comes out, looks normal, but because of the extra estrogen floating around, there's this protein bound to it, to the thyroid, and so you're not able to use it properly. So levels may look normal, but you may still be experiencing thyroid symptoms, which we'll talk about. And then stress also depletes nutrients that we need to make these hormones. So it's a double whammy. I know this is kind of all downer stuff. We'll get to the good, happy, fun stuff, I promise. Okay, so these are some of the symptoms of thyroid dysfunction. If you're cold all the time, constipation is a huge one. Dry skin or hair, brittle hair falling out, hair, brain fog. Those are all. Goiter is pretty rare. That's more because of iodine deficiency, but that can happen. Okay, I think this might be one of the last bad news slides. Well, this is explaining a little bit more about the relationship between weight and inflammation and stress. Yeah, I want to move my slides over a little bit. I can see. So cortisol promotes abdominal fat storage, and unfortunately that's the most unhealthy kind of fat. It's the visceral fat. And then this extra weight unfortunately stimulates more inflammatory messengers to be released, which then kind of starts the whole cycle over again. And then you'll also get this hunger, this hormone leptin increased. I'm sorry. Yeah, actually leptin is the satiety hormone that gets suppressed so that you have trouble knowing when you're full. So you're hungrier. It's just a vicious cycle, but there is something we can do about it. And then the other thing that happens is cortisol and insulin work against each other. Basically, when cortisol causes blood sugar to be increased, and then insulin gets released to try to clean up that blood sugar. But then the more insulin we produce, then our cells start to become resistant to it. And we just get more and more cortisol and more insulin, more and more sugar, just pumping out. Finally, what can we do about it? We want to take our body back from stress, right? We want to know what we can do about it. You can have testing done. You can find out what your curve looks like, your cortisol curve. You can see if you get your blood tested at your doctor's, it's going to give you a spot check of cortisol. It will tell you if it's overall running high, but it won't give you like a full picture of what's happening throughout the day. And again, with the thyroid testing, you may just get a simple thyroid T4 test or TSH test, and it looks normal, but a closer look may show that there is a problem. So there's more extensive testing that you can do along with your health coach. And of course, we need to deal with the stress. It's not going to go away. Stress is all around us, but we need to take control. What can we do about it? So one way we can feel in control is to kind of prioritize and I've got a little form I'm going to send everybody who's here tonight that for those who like to write things down can kind of help you organize, like, oh, all these things I'm stressed about, which ones can I deal with right now, or do I need to deal with right now? Which ones can wait, and which ones can I let go of? A lot of us really need to work on this setting boundaries and saying no. Easier said than done, right? There's so many pressures on us, but we have to take care of ourselves. We have to make ourselves a priority. We need to limit the input of news and social media. There's just too much bad news coming in, too much stress. We just need to turn it off for a while. Sort out your shit. I got that phrase from Laura in her spin class. I love that. But really, if there's big stressors in your life, maybe counseling or journaling, trying to get to the bottom of them. Maybe now is the time, even though it's, it might create more stress at first. Maybe it will, end up in a happier, more in control feeling you. Practicing mindfulness, which is learning to be aware of stress-provoking thoughts and trying to replace them worrying or anxiety with trying to understand where those thoughts and emotions coming from, just trying to be more self-aware. Healthy relationships, again, easier said than done, but so important. Even relationships with pets can really help. And tap into spirituality. Studies show that adults who have a spiritual faith have lower cortisol levels. And if you don't feel like you're a spiritual person, then kind of doing some things. I want to be careful when I say doing things for others, because we don't want to just add to our task list, but something that makes you feel good, something meaningful, not just another to do. And taking care of ourselves. I think I shared with you on Instagram the stat about people who take baths have like a 22% lower risk of heart attack and stroke. It's amazing. It's all in the science. But all the good stuff. Now you have an excuse to go get a massage and have fun, get out in nature. And that one, getting outside, is so important to help your sleep cycle too, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But also trying to reframe negative thoughts. That's another way to try to get control. And that's something that health coaches can try to help you do through positive psychology. This is part of what I try to do with my clients, try to help you identify your strengths so that you can feel empowered in the face of stressful and challenging situations, and to reframe failures as learning experiences. Exercise and sleep, all part of it. So sleep's when your body restores itself and detoxifies, when you heal, when you process stressors. Sleep deprivation messes with the cortisol cycle and vice versa. And do you ever notice when you're really tired, you're also really hungry and maybe craving those comfort foods more? That's because you're releasing this hormone called ghrelin, the hunger hormone. Now, to help you sleep better, the two biggest interrupters to sleep, to your natural circadian rhythms, are light and food. So when it's time to start going down to sleep, you really want to start turning the lights down, turning off lights in the house, getting off the phone a little bit more, maybe turning off the TV and more reading a book. When I say get out in nature, that helps you be more in tune with the sun and the setting sun. And then food also, when we eat too close to bedtime, that kind of tells our body, oh, it's time to be awake, and it squirts out more cortisol. So if possible, try not to eat 2 hours before you go to bed, or at least 1 hour. That I know can be really easier said than done too, but it's something to work toward. Maybe you can't do it every night, but the other thing is food tamps down human growth hormone, which breaks down fat and uses that energy to build and repair muscle. So that is one way. You've heard intermittent fasting. Well, that is one really good way to fast, is just to have a time, a few hours before you sleep, and when you wake up in the morning, maybe wait till you feel hungry to eat. And that lets your body work with its natural cycles. And then exercise. What happens with exercise is you get a little bit of a spike in cortisol while you're doing a high intensity activity, but then it helps it get lower down at night the way it's supposed to. But you do still want to make sure you have plenty of recovery, and you want to make sure you're choosing activities that you really enjoy that aren't mentally, it doesn't feel like something you hate doing. It should be, like at Form 603, it's so fun because all our friends are there and we have great motivators. And we definitely do HIIT, high intensity interval training there, which increases another hormone, irisin, which converts white fat linked with unhealthy metabolism to brown. So doing great there. All right. Now, do you think we're actually going to talk about food? Do you think that the nutritionist might talk about food? Yes, let's do that. All right. So what we can do with the right diet is we can actually beat cortisol to the punch with an anti-inflammatory diet. We're talking the Mediterranean diet, basically, and we'll talk about more what those components are. Basically, cortisol doesn't have to work so hard. It doesn't get stimulated as much because it doesn't seem like as many fires going on in our body. So why do we crave sugar? Here cortisol is saying, oh, come on, baby, just a little bite of sugar. So actually, sugar, which is inflammatory, it does release serotonin and dopamine from the brain, which calm your nervous system in an attempt to bring cortisol under control. But sugar is actually inflammatory and stimulates cortisol. And unfortunately, it kind of becomes an addiction, which we've all experienced. The more sugar you eat, the more you want. And it leads to a vicious cycle. And also, of course, too much sugar is full of calories and leads to weight gain. But we also don't want to let blood sugar get too low, because this can also make you crave sugar and create sugar and insulin and cortisol spikes. So we'll talk about that too. So what do we want to eat? So we'll talk about healthy meals, healthy snacks, and healthy treats, okay? Smart meals. So this is a beautiful dish that my husband brought home for me from the works one day. I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to take a picture of this and use it. And this can go, these guidelines for whether it's breakfast or lunch or dinner. And remember, breakfast doesn't have to be breakfasty foods. It can be leftovers from dinner. You really want to emphasize protein, especially plant protein, plant-based protein, eggs, fish, a little bit of chicken, a little bit of cheese, not as much, the red meats, and certainly not the processed meats. But if we have at least 30 grams of protein per meal, and that's about the size of your palm, it increases the satiety hormone, ghrelin, and ghrelin sensitivity in the brain. So it actually, not only does it slow the release of food from your stomach so that your blood sugar stays more even, it actually does. That's why you stay fuller when you eat protein. And then you want some slow carbs with it. What are slow carbs? Well, we're talking true whole grains, like not just bread that says, whole grain. It's got some whole grains sprinkled in. We're talking like oats, quinoa, brown rice. These take a long time for your body to digest, and they're also really good for your gut. They are prebiotic food for those good bacteria, and we'll mention that later. Also, slow carbs include low glycemic index starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes, Okay. And at breakfast, you don't even have to have any carbs at all, but if you're going to have carbs, have slow carbs. Then the third part is anti-inflammatory foods. So this fish here does double duty because the omega-3s are also anti-inflammatory. But what else is anti-inflammatory? All those beautiful colors of the rainbow, fruits and vegetables. The darker, the better, darker color. Greens, oranges. And then our herbs and spices, like we talked about last month in our Let's Get Spicy. Those are all anti-inflammatory. So with all these good nutrients, we're supporting the body, we're letting it respond to stress in a healthy way and beating cortisol to the punch. And you also want to include some healthy fats with that to also help keep your blood sugar nice and steady, so you've got that nice steady energy. Now, in between our meals, we don't want low blood sugar. We don't want that craving to have to come in. It's okay to be comfortably hungry. That's fine. And it's great to pay attention to what your body's telling you, to your cues. But, if you're feeling hungry, then it's time for a sustaining snack, especially if you're active. So I really like protein and healthy fats, like a nice nuts and seeds for a good snack. And then if you're doing really intense training, eating fruit during that time can help decrease the cortisol that you're secreting. But I will be sending you all some recipes also for some nice balanced lunches, dinner, some meals, and I'm going to send you some nice hippie mix recipe you can use. Now, my favorite part, smart treats, dark chocolate. You've heard women need chocolate every day. It's true. Have a good 2 ounces of nice, high quality, high cocoa content. Aim for 70% or higher. It actually reduces cortisol and stimulates serotonin release, the good mood hormones. It's high in antioxidants and it has prebiotics for gut health. So there you go. And I'm going to send you a recipe for a delicious raspberry. It's really just raspberries, bowl of raspberries with some cut up chunks of chocolate and some mint in it. Delicious. Or just the chocolate. All right. Water. So important. So dehydration increases cortisol. So what's a good goal? How much water do you need? Try for half your weight in pounds, and that's the number of ounces. So for example, if you weigh 140 pounds, half of that would be 70 ounces of water would be your goal for the day. So that'd be like 3 of these babies right here. This one's 24. So 3 of those would be 72. So that's what you're looking at. Non-caffeinated herbal teas count toward that. All right. Key nutrients to support hormonal health. Magnesium, found in beans and greens and chocolate. Again, we want to get beans in your diet if you can, at least once a week, hopefully a couple days a week, and greens, if you can get them every day, please do. Most of us are not getting enough magnesium. And then selenium, found in the nuts and the seeds and seafood and mushrooms. Vitamin D is also really important for hormonal health. I recommend about 2,000 international units of vitamin D3 cholecalciferol daily, or if you're having your level checked, your 25 hydroxy D, you want that over 30, and over 50 is better. Now, iodine is a necessary nutrient for thyroid health. But many Americans are getting way too much iodine in our diets, and it's actually damaging our thyroid gland. This is a big issue. So a major place that hidden iodine can be is actually commercial breads. The trouble is that companies don't have to put on their label how much iodine is in the product, so it's really hard to know. But mostly it's the dough conditioners that are used for the products that have a longer shelf life. So, too much bread isn't so great for you anyway. The gluten can be a trigger for many people. But if you're going to eat bread, and some is fine, if you can make homemade or get it, get the kind that does, only stays good for a couple days, or the sprouted bread would be better. Okay. Next, caffeine, tea, and alcohol. Okay, so how many of you start your day with a big cup of coffee and then maybe another cup of coffee and then coffee to keep you going through the day? Well, caffeine is a stimulant drug. It's used in the ICU. If Kiki were here, she's in the ER, she would back me up on this. It's used along with epinephrine to increase blood pressure when someone's in shock and all their systems are shutting down. It's a powerful, powerful stimulant drug. And it stimulates cortisol. So my recommendation is don't let it be the first thing you put in your body. Try really hard to get some protein in first, then and see how you're feeling. You might be already feeling better from that good nutrition, but if you still need it, have your coffee with some food, and take it slow, see how you feel. Try to cut back if you can. It's also a diuretic and therefore dehydrating. Tea, even black tea, seems to be a lot better. It has less caffeine, and it does have many health benefits, including being anti-Parkinson's. Now, alcohol, I'm not going to tell you not to have any alcohol. It's in moderation. It's part of the Mediterranean diet. It's included. It can promote relaxation, but too much, it's basically a poison that your body has to metabolize, and it can be very dehydrating. So if you are drinking, make sure you're drinking lots of water too, and keep it to a minimum, just one drink if you can, except for those special occasions. But I do still want you to have fun. So speaking of poisons, I'm sorry, more bad news, but the world we live in is full of toxins, and all these exposures, our body registers as stress and stimulate more cortisol. So damages our hormonal system. So we're talking, if you smoke, definitely, but smoke exposure, pollution, heavy metals, if you had mercury fillings, mold in your home, it can be a toxin that you, endocrine disruptors in flame retardants, and that are in our mattresses, for goodness sake. BPA in plastics, these directly interrupt the hormones. And then definitely cumulative pesticide exposure in our food. I do definitely promote organic as much as you can, especially animal products where they bioaccumulate. And if you can't do all of your veggies and fruits organic, you can look online for the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 from the EPA working group, and I will tell you which ones are the highest. But do what you can. It's better to eat non-organic veggies than no veggies at all. But if you can go organic, it's worth it. Okay, we're almost done here. I know this has been a lot of information, a little information overload, but so we talked about the GI tract being a second brain and the microbiome. So we're going to do a whole talk on gut health next time, and also another talk on the toxic burden and detoxing. But we'll just briefly talk about how there's a two-way communication between our gut and our brain, and of course our brain with our hormone system. And our gut is, of course, home to our microbiome, all those little critters that live in there. They're actually like an entire organ, the way they function. Our microbiome weighs up to 5 pounds and has 200 times the number of genes as the human genome. Incredible. It's a large part of the immune response we were talking about, that, fire. So we really need to take care of our gut, and we will talk about how to do that next time. And last, adaptogens. You may have heard some of the hype about adaptogens. Some examples: ashwagandha, reishi mushroom, holy basil. These are considered the royalty of herbal medicine traditions like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine. They were actually studied by the Soviet military to increase productivity of the soldiers in harsh conditions. Now, this is not the goal here, to have us add more to our plates, but they're beginning to be researched more extensively and seem to aid the body's ability to adapt to stress. So, there's some potential here. I am currently doing an experiment on myself with ashwagandha. I did a lot of research, and that, so far so good. I definitely feel like it chills me out a little bit without making me tired. But you need to be careful because they each kind of have their own personality, and you need to find the right fit for you and start with just one. If you're going to start with one, start with a small amount and build up, and be aware they may interact with medications or be contraindicated with certain medical conditions. So you do need to be careful, and even better to work with a good coach or naturopathic physician. Now, if you're interested in nutrition and wellness coaching, if you're thinking you might want to try it out and have some more personalized help just for you and what you have going on, I invite you to stop by my website, which I know you know how to get to because you signed up for this webinar. If you click on the Start Here button on the homepage, or go to the menu and click Start Here, it will bring you to this page. And you can sign up for a free 15 minutes with me, and we can chat and see, if you think it's for you. Or if you're ready to jump in, you can you can click on the monthly coaching session, and that will bring you to a monthly pricing plan. You can either join for 1 month or 3 months or 6 months, and it gets cheaper per month as you, the more months you sign up for, but I think it's very reasonable. But free is good, so you can definitely try it for free. I encourage that. And finally, please send me questions. My email is right here, askamy@nourishwhatsinside.com. I love when I don't know an answer to a question, and I will research it for you and find you a good answer. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Ask Amy, and I try to put lots of ideas up there for meals, and sometimes it's just what I'm eating that day. It's not always pretty, but it's, I try to make it real.